Well, the NFL season has come to a close, with the Chiefs once again hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, and the way things are shaping up are in perfect shape to do it for a third time, but let's not focus on that. Let's focus on me, myself, and my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I believe are facing down the most terrifying offseason of the NFL because our number one offensive player, our number one defensive player, our quarterback, and several other pieces are set to become free agents in March. So, we're going to be looking at 4 signings and 4 cuts the Buccaneers should make in the offseason. The 4 signings should be very obvious, but the 4 cuts might actually surprise you because I'm not going to be picking bench players and role players. I could say, yeah, let's cut Ryan Neal, Greg Gaines. No, I'm talking fully fledged starters. I don't necessarily think these 4 players should be cut. I won't be happy to see them go if they do, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had about all 4 of them. So, let's get right into it. Signing number 1, quarterback Baker Mayfield. I just want to reiterate that no team besides the 49ers with Brock Purdy have gotten more value out of their quarterback than the Bucs did this season. Baker Mayfield was signed to a 1-year, $4 million deal that was very incentive heavy. Mitch Trubisky had a higher salary than he did this year. To everybody's surprise, Baker finished with career highs in passing touchdowns, passing yards, attempts, completions, and completion percentage. And maybe most importantly, he played in all 17 regular season games and both playoff games, which is that's a lot more than I can say for a lot of teams this season. And for what it's worth, during the playoffs, he led all quarterbacks in passing yards and passing touchdowns through the first 2 rounds. If he was on a prove-it deal, I think he's proven it and then some. Is he going to set the league on fire? Probably not, but I think he's earned the respect of the locker room and the fans. He's young, resilient, cheap, and a stable pick to be QB1 for a few years. Spotrac.com has Baker's estimated contract extension at 4 years, $108 million, or roughly $27 million per year. Although I've heard figures like $30 and $40 million a year being thrown around, but I don't really know if that's true. I don't think he's gonna go for that much money. But if we can really get him on a $27 million year deal, getting a franchise QB for that little and for that long is a deal the Bucs and any team should absolutely make. But it's also a deal that other teams like the Steelers, Broncos, or Vikings would be very interested in as well. So I hope we make the right choice and keep him in Tampa Bay. So I think the bigger question is, what is the Bucs' ceiling with Baker Mayfield at quarterback? And I think that's a video for another time. I'll get to that later. Cut number 1, linebacker Devin White. I know this doesn't really count as a cut because he's a free agent, but look, I gotta talk about Devin White. This season was the nail in the coffin for the former All-Pro linebacker Devin White, who, in a contract season, needed to prove to Todd Bowles, after a long trend of declining production, why he needs to stay in Tampa. Instead, he only had 1 or 2 impactful games and got benched halfway through the season for KJ Britt, and then the defense started to flourish without Devin in it. The decision to bench White was actually a surprise from Todd Bowles. I didn't think he'd have the balls to do it because he's been Devin's number 1 supporter throughout his Tampa Bay career, but ultimately he had to make a head coach's decision, and I think ultimately it worked. KJ Britt became a surprisingly great player in the games that he started, especially in the wildcard round where he helped stop the tush push. To the Buccaneers' credit, we're a very well-run team. You know, we don't have any controversies, we don't have any divas, except for Devin White. I mean, and he's not even that big of a diva, but he did do the thing that's popular now where you sit out of training camp and pout if you don't get a super extension, and he did do that because he didn't want to play on his 5th-year option. And it was crazy of him to protest while putting up some of the worst PFF grades of any NFL player through 4 years, and there have been multiple film studies floating around like last season questioning his effort on the field, and Look, I just think he needs a change of scenery because outside of his legendary 2020 playoff run, he really hasn't done anything for the Buccaneers. So get live 45, you're going to need to take you and your horses to a new city if you want to continue your career. And I'm sure he is because he was the former 5th overall pick not too long ago. Someone's going to pick him up. Signing number 2, safety Antoine Winfield Jr. Bucs fans have been shouting it from the rooftops for months now. Keep Winfield in Tampa, pay that man whatever contract he wants. Antoine Takeaway Tweez Winfield Jr. is the best defensive player on our roster and one of the best in the NFL, boasting his best season to date in a contract season, playing all 17 games with 3 interceptions, 6 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 6 tackles for loss, a top 3 PFF grade all season among safeties. He made All-Pro and was an inexcusable Pro Bowl snub for Budda Baker, who had relatively no stats. And those 6 forced fumbles, 2 of them came on the goal line denying a touchdown that, in the Panthers game, pretty much saved the Buccaneers season. Winfield was consistent almost every game for a defense that was inconsistent all year. So, should we make him the highest paid safety in the NFL? The answer is absolutely. He can be up there with Warren Sapp, Rondé Barber, and Derek Brooks the way that he's playing right now. And I hope that he'll be a Buccaneer for life. And even if we can't come to terms on a Supermax deal, worst case scenario is we just franchise tag him. Players like him are what the franchise tag is for. Cut number 2, corner Carlton Davis. Carlton is a solid corner, definitely a starting corner in the NFL, but man, after the season our secondary had where we finished bottom 5 in passing yards allowed, some things have gotta change. And that starts with our corner duo, Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. Both of them have big contracts. The Bucs have the 4th most expensive corner room in the NFL, but damn, it sure does not feel like it. So gun to my head, if I had to pick a corner to cut, it has to be Carlton. He missed 5 games throughout the season and finished with a 58.2 PFF grade on the season. He's carrying the 6th highest cap hit of all corners, and he's like maybe a top 15 corner. The Bucs have plenty of cap space to work with, but what if Tristan Wirfs wants an extension now instead of later? Couple that with all the other extensions we need to make, and we need to trim some fat. So, Carlton Davis, I hope your career continues, and I'm certain it will, but right now we're paying you too much and not getting enough. Signing number 3, wide receiver Mike Evans. No surprise here, we all knew this was coming. After the season that Mike and Baker had together, I think it's clear that both of them have to stay right where they are. Many haters speculated whether Mike was going to hit his infamous 1,000-yard season with Baker Mayfield because Baker was considered garbage at the time. But Mike Evans proved that he could do it with anybody and then some, boasting a 1,255-yard regular season with 13 receiving touchdowns, which tied Tyreek Hill for the most receiving touchdowns of the year. He probably could have had more than 1,500 yards if not for his recurring wide open drops, which need to be studied by a committee of scientists, but his production against all odds was once again one of the best in the league. We had a shot at extending him before the season began, and he made it clear that he wanted an extension now rather than later, but it kinda went down like this. Okay, there goes the offseason. So now we just got to get ready for the preseason and hope that Baker can still throw the ball like he used to. Hey. Oh God, Mike, what can I do for you, man? So are you guys really not going to extend me this season? Me? You're not going to extend me? Right, yeah, I heard from your agent. Listen, it's nothing like that. We just, what more do you guys want from me? I'm one of the best wide receivers in the league still. Well, that's kind of why we can't pay you right now, Mike. You're our most valuable player, but you're also our most valuable trade asset. Oh, no. Yeah, if you haven't noticed, we might be really bad this season, so if we are clearly not making the playoffs by the trade deadline, then we're going to trade you to another team so we can save millions of dollars and get some early draft picks to start our rebuild with. But if we're actually pretty good and you go out there and you light up that football field every Sunday without getting hurt, then let's have this conversation again in March, okay? So I'm a trade in case of emergency player this year? That's a good way of putting it, yeah. Alright, you do you. Just know that I'm gonna be flying around. I'm gonna be taking the interviews and asking about contracts. I'm not just gonna sit here and wait patiently. Listen, you do whatever. You go out there, you get your interviews, you come back with a price, you come back to me and we'll negotiate, okay? He's a massive free agent right now, and there are definitely more wide receiver needy teams than the Bucs right now. The Jets and Chiefs are big possibilities, and unfortunately, so are the Panthers.
It's not true. That's impossible!
So, of all the Bucs free agents, I'd say Mike has the biggest chance of falling into the wrong hands, so I'm praying by my bedside every night that he chooses to spend what's likely his final contract with the city that loves him more than any other. He's the best offensive player in Buccaneers history by a long shot, and I want him to stay a Buccaneer for life. Cut number 3. You guys are not gonna like this one, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Wide receiver Chris Godwin. Hey, I know, I get it, alright? I'm sorry. Look, we probably won't have to do it, but if we do need the cap space, then I'm prepared to make this decision. Listen, nobody mentions Mike Evans without his brother-in-arms Chris Godwin. Chris has been an excellent receiver for a third-round pick not too long ago, but his production just wasn't there this season, and really it wasn't there the season before either. He barely hit 1,000 yards and only had 2 receiving touchdowns during the regular season. And the season before, in 2022, he also barely broke 1,000 yards and only had 3 receiving touchdowns. This is decent production for a wide receiver, like he is hitting 1,000 yards and that's like the benchmark of what makes a good receiver, but not one that costs $20 million a year. It's the same problem I have with Carlton Davis. So like I said, I doubt we're gonna cut Chris Godwin, but if he's gonna come between me and Baker, or me and Mike, or me and Winfield, then yeah, he's gonna have to go. Signing number 4, linebacker Lavonte David. Simply put, Lavonte David is a Hall of Fame linebacker in my eyes. One that nobody tends to talk about, but one that is entirely worthy of the gold jacket someday. He's played his entire 12-year career right here in Tampa Bay and is entering his 13th season at 34 years old. But the way he plays, he doesn't look a day over 24. But now, we're wondering if his retirement is coming soon. I'd be shocked if he hung it up this season because his play hasn't declined at all, finishing this season with 5 sacks, a forced fumble, 5 pass deflections, and 99 solo tackles, which was 11th in the NFL. Doing all of this playing on an incredibly team-friendly deal of $4.5 million for 1 year, which is insanely generous on his part, and we should repay that generosity with a legitimate contract that could likely be the last of his career. I would say that if we don't, then another team will, but I don't know if that's true because it seems that nobody outside of Tampa Bay knows how good Lavonte David is. He's rarely missed any time in his career due to injury, and because of that, he has passed the 1,000 total tackle milestone. Do you know how many players in NFL history have recorded over 1,000 total tackles? Only 15, and he's one of them. So I hope he can continue to play for Tampa Bay until his soon retirement. And finally, cut number 4, edge rusher Shaquille Barrett. Shaq is a good guy, a player who has been with the team for years on end and one who has made a significant impact throughout his career in Tampa. But this past season, we just haven't seen the production that we expected. Last season, the pass rush wasn't very good, especially in the latter half of the season, and we attributed that to Shaq missing over half the season with his torn Achilles. So this season we figured, okay, he's back, so we should be good now. But he came back and his production was only okay. Look back at his previous years in Tampa, like his 20 sack season in 2019, followed by 8 sack and 10 sack seasons afterward. Then last season he only started in 8 games before the Achilles tear, so we don't count that one. And this year he started in 16 games but only posted 5 sacks with a career low 3 tackles for loss. I mean, he didn't do that bad and he can be a stable edge pick for a few more years, but again, he costs too damn much. $17 million for an aging and declining edge is a tough pitch. And many insiders such as the Pewter Report team expect him to be one of the first cuts this offseason. Even Barrett himself seemed to admit that his time was probably up, citing that his contract doesn't match his production, and with the emergence of young defensive players like KJ Britt, Kalijah Cansey, and Yaya Diaby, he looks very expendable now. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was the gist of what he said. I'm sure he can still find work somewhere else, but he likely will not be playing out his last contract year for Tampa. And that wraps up my 4 signings and 4 cuts for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to have more Buccaneers content coming soon, like is Todd Bowles still on the hot seat? What is our ceiling with Baker Mayfield? And of course, the NFL 2023 season review. I'm actually going to finish it this year. I know I only did the AFC, the North and the East. And I only did that. I'm going to make it way shorter. I'm actually going to finish it with all 32 teams. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be my best video yet.